Good morning, everybody. That was sad. All right, you have to bear with me. I have a cold and my voice is kind of all over the place, so I appreciate you hanging out for this conversation. So one of the things that I love about coming to KubeCon is the amazing number of people here that are doing the coolest stuff. And there's so many great technologies and so many great initiatives that are happening that it's always thrilling to come and be part of this community. So thank you for letting me come and spend the week and then talk a little bit about Cloud Native today. Cloud Native is something that I talk a lot about, but I'm so excited about what it's doing and the potential. So I want to tell a little bit of story about why and what this means to me. Have you ever made a choice that changed your life? Took a trip that opened your mind to the world around you? Maybe took a new job that launched your career? Recently, I made a life-changing choice. I changed banks. Okay, so maybe it's not life-changing, but I hate to go to the bank. It's such a drag. And I changed the bank because I wanted to move my money to a digitally native bank, a bank that never started as a brick and mortar, a bank that didn't exist a few years ago. And I gotta say, the experience is amazing. It's clean, it's simple. It gave me control over my money, but more importantly, control over my time. I don't have to go to the bank. I don't have to go through a variety of menus to get to what I need to do. And so for me, it changed the way that I thought about my time and how I spent it. But if you're a traditional bank, customers like me scare you because now I'm willing to change and move away from a brand that I've used for years for something that's more agile, faster, and fits with my lifestyle. And this type of change isn't just happening in financial services. It's happening in healthcare, retail, the government. And the industries across the board are changing. And cloud native technologies are really fundamentally part of that shift. But right now, there's cloud everything. There's retail in the cloud, healthcare in the cloud. Hell, there's even pizza delivery in the cloud. And that's changing the way that we think about what these solutions look like. And many organizations, large and small, are now cobbling together a variety of vendors, technologies, solutions to help achieve this outcome. And it's becoming really complicated. So I spend a lot of time talking about cloud native, digital transformation, but more importantly, what are the technologies that enable you to take advantage of the cloud? And so I spend a lot of time talking about Cloud Foundry, but the core tenets of Cloud Foundry mirror each and every one of the core tenets for these technologies that sit behind us. Because the sole goal is to allow velocity, allow innovation, but more importantly, allow interoperability. So when we talk about velocity, it's really getting your applications out the door as quickly as possible. How do I get it out and into production? And innovation comes from the feedback loop around that. Pulling that back in, taking that feedback, and pushing back and iterate on new applications over and over and over again. But interoperability is also in the middle of all of this. It's how do all of these technologies fit together? How do they interconnect? And how does that technology continue to scale over time to meet my needs? All of you in here are thinking a lot about cloud native. You're at a conference where you're really thinking about what does this mean for me, for my career, for my company? But looking at where the enterprises are going, that demand, those skill sets and those technologies are going to become even more important. In the next 2 years, the cloud native applications that are used by enterprises are expected to peak over 100,000 or 100%. Sorry about that. So we're going to see tremendous amount of momentum over the next year and a half. But if you're a technology at one of these companies, a technologist, your world has gotten so big. The scope of what you have to think about every single day is just getting bigger, not smaller. So if you're a CIO, you're thinking, all right, I've got to shape the future of my company. My CEO, my board is now looking at me to drive this forward. And oh, by the way, I need to move away from being a cost center to generating revenue from these changes. Or if you're an operator, you're architecting your company's future. You're the one that is really shaping the platforms and the technologies that are going to be able to deliver the future that the company is banking on. And finally, developers, you're the ones that are creating our future. You're the ones that are building it and shaping it and are going to have the applications that really showcase where the companies need to go. But imagine what we could all solve together. You know, one of the best things about Cloud Foundry and all the technologies here is that it's open source. And open source really gives us an opportunity to do things we could never do on our own. It's the opportunity to get us all collectively together to share ideas, best practices, and perspectives. And that diversity of thought and diversity of participation is what makes open source so powerful. But more importantly, it's what makes it so innovative. So last year, I spent a lot of time asking, our users and our community to imagine the possibilities. Imagine what we could do with cloud-native technologies. But in 2018, we don't really have to imagine anymore, do we? It's here. These technologies are here, and they're running at scale, and enterprises around the world are changing their business every single day on these technologies. For a company like Volkswagen, the automotive industry is changing and changing quickly. They're no longer creating cars that get you from point A to point B. They're now creating mobile devices. Those are devices with a tremendous number of sensors and data that they need to be able to use to be competitive in a market that's changing and changing quickly. And if you're a company like Volkswagen, 2 years ago, you didn't really have developers. This wasn't top of mind to create and innovate. And so they've spent the last 2 years building a development team. But more importantly, as they grew that development team, they're like, okay, well, I got to develop these apps, I got to innovate, but I got to do that across 12 brands. And by the way, what's also important to me is flexibility. I need to be able to run those applications across any cloud, on-prem and public. Or a company, or not even really a company, the military, the US Air Force. You don't think about them when you think about cloud-native applications or who's doing innovative work. But they're collecting a massive amount of information that they're feeding back out to their flight patterns and how they're spending their time and charting out the future of their organization. And for them, they had a massive budget. But 70% of that budget was going to just keeping the lights on. And only 30% of their budget was going to new R&D. In fact, it took them so long to get an app out. By the time they got an application out the door, it was already obsolete. So, they were really the epitome of a slow-moving, sluggish organization that was trying to figure out how to develop applications. But for them, they took cloud seriously. But more importantly, they took Agile seriously, implemented Agile practices, sped up their delivery pipelines, and now are shifting their funding. 30% goes towards keeping the lights on, and 70% goes to new and innovative ideas. And they're getting applications out the door every couple of months, which is a far sight better than every couple of years. And oh, by the way, for them, it's also a cost savings. They saved $600 million in the process. But retail is another industry that is being quickly disrupted. Home Depot is a brick and mortar that literally sells brick and mortar. And that's their audience. Their audience is, how do I help you do work on your home? How do I bring the experience to you? But Home Depot had a problem. Amazon was selling more hammers than they were. And if you're a company that's a brick and mortar trying to compete with Amazon and retail, that's a very difficult proposition, especially when software development isn't part of your core competency. Home Depot has done an amazing amount of work over the last 2 years. They have 2,500 cloud-native developers now running over 2,000 applications in production. Most people don't think of Home Depot as a digitally native shop or a company that is actually iterating that quickly. Home Depot went from deploying code every 6 weeks to now every 15 minutes. That's right, a company like Home Depot is now deploying code every single day to production. And so as we think about the cloud native journey for all of these companies across all three of these industries, but also every industry, it's the fact that being able to write applications and get them out into production as quickly as possible is what allows you to not only be competitive in your space, but save you time and save you money. But what's also important for a lot of these organizations is the ability to continue to grow and build on those technologies, which is why Cloud Native Computing Foundation is so important. Cloud Native Computing Foundation really fosters a lot of amazing technology that we've been really thrilled to be part of as the Cloud Foundry community. And it's something that's actually part of our core ethos for this year as well, is how do we continue to build, take advantage of, and be part of these different conversations and communities with a lot of these new and innovative technologies. In fact, it all started in 2016 with the Open Service Broker API project. That's when we opened up the service broker beyond Cloud Foundry and said, you know what? There's a huge opportunity for the Service Broker API to be used across any platform for any service. But more importantly, how do we build on top of that? How do we continue to bring more services in, but also build on top of the capabilities that Service Broker really can provide to all of us? And so last year, we also started using that as an opportunity to work with Kubernetes. Last year, we launched, towards the end of last year, in October, we launched the Cloud Foundry Container Runtime, which is Kubernetes on Bosch. We got it certified at the end of last year. And in our last user survey, recognized that nearly half of our user base, which is over half the Fortune 500, are either already running it or interested in running that. So cloud native is here, but more importantly, it's really starting to grow and pick up. And there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for us to all collectively work together, continue to innovate on these technologies, because right now is, in my humble opinion, the most exciting time in technology. So my ask of each of you is to be part of this open source journey with us. To come, contribute, bring your ideas and your thoughts, because that's what makes our technology the best and the most innovative. One of the things we do in Cloud Foundry is we do a lot of data. We have data for everything. We research everything because it's really important for us to start from that when we build our strategies and our paths. And one of the things we heard in our last round of research is that only 34% of individuals and organizations are contributing to open source right now. 43% of companies, though, are. But what's interesting is 80%, so the large majority of people would contribute if their companies allowed for it or supported that. So another of my ask is that if you have a team of developers, give them that opportunity to contribute and participate in open source and be part of this collective experience that continues to drive these technologies forward. You know, I can't be up here and not brag about our community a little bit, which I know many are in the audience here. But for me, open source represents more than just the statistics and the numbers. It represents the potential. The potential that we all have collectively as we work together to fundamentally change not only our organizations that we work in, but the industry as a whole. And I'm really excited about the potential of what we can all do together. Because at the end of the day, ultimately, we all want choice and control. We want to have choice about what technology we use and how we use them. But we also want control over how we're doing that and how we're spending our time. Today, I can honestly say that the future of cloud is at every one of our fingertips. And now's the opportunity for us to all participate in that. Thank you.